Supervisors, please push your P and plus for attendance. Record will show that Supervisor Noble is excused tonight. I believe we have 27 in attendance. All right, citizen comments. Citizen comments are limited to 5 minutes. If you'd like to address the county board on any topic, please move to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and again, you'll have 5 minutes.
My name's Mark Montague. I live at 7835 36th Avenue, Kenosha. And we might want to change this to employee comments. First off, I'd like to speak in favor of the 990C contract that they negotiated with the county. I see it's on the agenda, and I would like to give them my support in moving forward on their contract. Next is a couple other issues. One's on the agenda, one isn't. I'm also the president of Local 70, which is Kenosha County Highway Department. And as most of us have known, we've had 14 employees laid off since the middle of June. We've been working along with the county, trying to find solutions to this problem. And we haven't found anything yet, but we're still trying. First of all, I guess I'd like to say, and I think most of the supervisors here that know me or remember me know that we're just not a bunch of crybabies. We come to the county board with issues, they're serious. If we're in front of the administrative committee, it's something important. One of the first ideas I'd like to address today is when the county first realized that we were going to be looking at revenue shortfalls, what did we do to initiate some plan? Up till June something, when we were still negotiating, the plan was just to lay off. Sorry, I got the wrong page here, but I'm going to jump back because some of this will stem back to the highway department. One of the first things that, if we were looking at saving revenue, there's a 2-year appointment today on the paper for the appointment of Ray Arbert as Division Chief of the Department of Public Works. 2 years ago, when he was first appointed, everybody knew about the revenue shortfall. Everybody knew about our impending disaster. What did we do? Did we take our foot off the throttle? No, at that point, what the county did was freeze any job available if it wasn't a management job. We still have 4 frozen positions. We still have 14 people lay off, and depending on what way you want to count it, I don't know what our minimum staffing level is. But the county chose to appoint a new public works director and hire a guy that started out at $1,000 more than his predecessor, which was Fred Patry. I believe he was making $107,000 at the point. We'll just start the new guy out at $108,000. Right now, one of the county's proposals is to have 10 of our employees come back and go through the progression steps. These are all 10-year employees that have been working at a full-time position. We're still negotiating, and negotiation is give and take. Right now, we're wondering where the progression steps are for that job. It's not what the county is asking us to do, and we don't see any type of public administration or road construction or any type of background that would help us out at the highway department. The one thing that I would like to stress is that still under investigation is a verbal confrontation between our Ray Arbit, and one of our members at a Parks and Highway Committee meeting at the Pranging Center. We'd like to see that resolved before there's any type of appointment to a permanent status for the director's job. We're not asking for anything that would be any less than if it was for any other employee. But we need to look at this so we can all move on. Part of the highway layoffs, we're getting back to that minimum number. What is our minimum staffing number? What is the safe limit to be out there? We've been taking a tally during the days, and sometimes we've got 30 employees there with 4 bosses. Sometimes we have less employees. Some of the bosses have 2 or 3 people underneath them for an 8-hour shift. Right now, the daily jobs, the grinding jobs that are out there every day, we're missing on, and we're falling behind. The potholes, the brushing behind signs, and probably the main thing is debris that's laying in the roadway, and if it's not in the roadway, it ends up on the shoulder somewhere, and it's always a nuisance. These are the things that are backing up now. We were told any other employee that retired under this new negotiation session would be replaced. Now we find out it's different. They're not going to replace anybody. The person that should be called back into work is sitting in the back now, still unemployed. The employees' insurance of our 14 employees. You guys had some issues with your insurance, and I understand you guys are woefully underpaid. You guys are now into negotiating what type of insurance, or if you're not going to have insurance, but we read it's going to be a wage increase, and you guys deserve it. It's a catch-up. You guys have been sitting around at $6 grand for how many years? For us, you know what happened to their insurance? Bam, it was gone immediately. There was no sessions or no 30 days, there was nothing. These guys are still scrounging, and I must say that the county has helped a couple of our employees find some decent options. We lost our center lining crew. We still have the truck and the people. Well, we don't have the people anymore because they're laid off. We farmed that out, but yet we spend $5 grand on a new sprayer to spray stop bars, which used to be done off the old truck. I already spoke to the supervision problem with the over bosses. We've got more people that are at work that could be a boss if they wanted to, and they probably have more respect and experience than some of the people that we have. I'll bring up one guy's name. His name is Lenny Voss. He's not here tonight. He lives out in Wheatland. This guy is a guy that initiated a concrete crew for Kenosha County Highway, set everything up, and now he's not there. We're still doing it. We're trying to get by. But if you know Lenny Voss, he is particular to detail, and perfect is the only thing he can accept. I guess one of my questions with the boss to employee ratio is if you're a corrections officer at the detention center, I've heard a couple numbers, and I hate to be wrong with my numbers. If you're on a dorm floor there, it's 64 to 1. 64 to 1. That sounds fair, doesn't it? But yet we need 3 or 4 bosses to watch 10 of us. It's not daycare. We're grown people. Another thing we were also told was that the state now would provide 6 fully funded state jobs year-round. The argument was always over the snowplow money and how many. Found out now that's going to be 3. Nobody's got a real good answer for that. But if they're going to continue at that rate, the superintendent that we have, who's a state-funded job, should be gone. What we have now in our department is a failure to communicate and a dysfunctional unit. The pride that we keep together is our inner pride with each other. I can say one thing, though: we don't have enough horses. We do not have enough people to do the work we need to do. Trying to find answers, trying to find solutions. I know none of them are easy, but we need your help. I know one solution will be when the first time it snows, we'll find out. Maybe the hard way. I just have a couple other things and then I'll be done.
You can wrap it up briefly, please.
Okay, thank you. I just bring up the example of the I-94 monster that continues to grow daily. Right now, we have no one assigned to the interstate currently in that job or still working at the Kenosha County Highway Department. It's nothing you really want to mess around with, but we're getting closer. Right now, I'm hoping you guys can think about solutions for us. I really do. You'll remember us better when it snows, and I want to thank you guys for your time and your attentiveness. God bless America.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Any other citizen comments? Any other citizens wishing to address the board? Seeing no one moving to the mic, citizen comments are closed. I'm sorry, Mr. Regani.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there still time?
Yes.
I'll make it brief. I'm Louis Regani, 4526 29th Avenue. I want to address some of the claims made by one of your colleagues in a local daily newspaper over the past week or so about the KRM line. You know, to me, when I see these comments, I think of a mosquito that's difficult to swat. It keeps flying around. The same misinformation is flying around as it has for the past year or so. Maybe it's more than a year, but I can tell you some of the claims made in that column, and I want to interrupt myself to thank you for shooting down this referendum thing. I love referenda. I love them. I love the chance to vote. But if we're going to vote, let's vote on everything, not just one thing every time somebody gets a whim. Claim was made CERTA has not many years to figure out the bus plan. CERTA was just started in July of last year. CERTA is 13 months old, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Transportation Authority. Didn't have many years at all. And what they do is they have to manage and operate and allocate the local share on the KRM line. See, the KRM line is funded. KRM line is funded. It's got its funding system set up through the rental car fees. So, I mean, if you want another tax to fund the KRM line, that's not fair. It's misleading. You don't need another tax to fund the KRM line. It's in progress. CERTA doesn't plan bus services in Kenosha or in the county. That's up to SEWRPAC, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. SEWRPAC right now is working with Kenosha and Racine. They're about halfway through on planning a 5-year plan for the future of bus transportation in the cities of Kenosha and Racine. They're about 50% of the way through that study, which is all the more reason to wait for a referendum, because nobody knows what's needed yet on the buses. And we know there's a lot of problems. There's major gaps in Kenosha service. The lines shut down when they shouldn't. We need people to get home from work. The lines aren't running. That's part of the study. And it's SEWRPAC, not CERTA. I mean, this is all part of the planning process that SEWRPAC is doing. I went to both legislative committee meetings when the KRM line was being discussed. Saw a lot of people from out of the county, let alone out of the city. Interesting that somebody else from a different county is going to tell us what to do. But I have to tell you something about, I did some digging. I know that Big Oil doesn't want the KRM line. Why? Because you only get one tailpipe to carry 300 people to Milwaukee and back in Racine, and from Milwaukee to Kenosha. Did some digging. Greenpeace USA said that there's a foundation, and I'm not sure what the name is yet. I'll do some digging. Americans for Progress, Americans for Prosperity. Anybody get a call from those people warning you about the dangers of the KRM line? I got a call, recording. Find out who's calling me. Let me just give a moment here. Americans for Progress paid for these recent telemarketing calls urging opposition to the proposed Kenosha-Racine-Milwaukee commuter rail line, which of course will lessen our dependence on foreign oil. I guess you know what's going on in the Gulf of Mexico. We are addicted to oil, and our oil consumption next year will be at a new high. Just excuse me, I should have been more prepared than this. I just got this. And I guess I'll have to wait till next time. I want to thank you for your kind attention. Don't believe everything you hear, even this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Regani. Any other citizen comments? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got to come back again for the KRM. But I saw in the paper that Bristol is going to have that question on their ballot coming up.
Okay,
And I know
excuse me, could you state your name and address, please, for the record?
Larry Obachowski, 3813 14th Avenue.
Thank you.
And I saw it's going to be on the ballot in Bristol. And also in that same article, I saw that it was down in the committee because of it wasn't seconded. Now, I know when I was at that meeting, Mr. Kubicki over there told us he was going to have another meeting, and it was possibly going to be out at Highway 45 and 50, and I know Mr. Haas was going to maybe get some people out there and have it out in the county more. And I'm not hearing anything about that. I don't know how honest you were about that. It doesn't seem like you were. But I'd like to keep this thing going here, if we can. And I see no reason why we can't have a question on that referendum for this train. You know, the people out here in the county aren't stupid. They know what's going on. That stinking tax on the rental cars is not going to pay for that train. There's no way it's going to pay for that train. We're going to get stuck with a sales tax. And I don't want to wait till Madison tells us what to do. Let us tell Madison what to do. Give us that chance. That's all we want is to vote on this. And I don't know what you people are scared of. I don't care if it goes yes or no. It doesn't matter to me. If people vote for yes for it, good for them. If it's no, good for us. That's the way it goes. But at least put the darn question on the ballot. It doesn't make any sense at all to me.
I would point out that Chairman Kubicki has committed to looking at the issue and continuing to look at the issue and holding a number of hearing sessions on it. I trust that he will do that, and I have nothing but confidence in the fact that he'll follow through. So my guess is that he was, in fact, honest at the meeting at Bristol. Any other citizen comments? Any other citizen comments? Seeing none, citizen comments are closed. Announcements of the chairman. First of all, I'd like to recognize a thank you card from David Gertzen and his wife Sharon for the flowers that the county board sent at the passing of Dave's mother-in-law, Agnes McMahon. Not only did were they appreciative of the flowers at the funeral, but they sent them to a nursing home afterwards and spread that joy much beyond the intended purpose of the flowers. So again, our condolences go out to Mr. Gertzen and his wife Sharon. I want to thank all those who pointed out the typo in the letter I sent out about tire at the county board meeting. I only bring it up to thank you for reading it and to get apparently the clerk's office off the hook. There's some assumption that they drafted the letter. I did it in about 3 minutes because Ms. Lamoth said if you don't get it to me now, it isn't going in the packet. In the future, I'll be more diligent about spell check. And again, I appreciate you. I appreciate the fact that you read the letter. I brought up a while ago and made copies of the Wisconsin Way report that is out there and available. I again want to encourage everyone to take some time, read it. I think there are some great concepts, thoughts, initiatives, facts in that report as it stands right now. Spend some time to understand what the initiative and the intent of that document is and the intent of the Wisconsin Way group, what they're looking to accomplish. I bring it up this evening not only to remind you but also to point out that in conjunction with that there's a Wisconsin Economic Summit series that's going on. The Wisconsin Way is part of it, University of Wisconsin System and a number of other organizations. They will have 3 summits, and August 2nd we have missed, which was in Appleton. August 26th will be in La Crosse, and October 5th will be in Milwaukee. And you can go to let's see, I believe it's Wisconsin Economic, actually it's wisconsinroundtable.org. wisconsinroundtable.org, Wisconsin WI, if you want some more information on this. But I hope that members of the county board will get involved, take a look at it, and pay attention to WCA. They're going to take an active role in where they head with the Wisconsin Way effort as well. Brief update on KD Park. The Green Ribbon Planning Committee met last month after a couple-month layoff over the summer with schedules what they are and people as busy as they are. I was encouraged at the progress that had been made in the lack of meetings over the summer, but the momentum exists. It continues to be there, and I think with the partners that we have on board right now, we're going to see some progress here in the next several months. We'll continue to report. I trust it'll be primarily reported through the Highway and Parks Committee through Chairman Elverman, and we'll make sure that we do that. With that, I have no other comments. Supervisor reports. Any supervisor wishing to make a report? Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At last week's Finance Committee meeting, we received a update on the county finances expenditures as of August 12th, or as of August. All expenditures at this time are within limits. The general fund, we did receive a report in the general fund. I'm not sure if it was on your desk or it was in your packet, but the general fund balance at the end of 2009, I don't know that that's the final audited number, and I'm looking at the most likely column is $6,277,000. We have certain items that we anticipate a surplus. We have a surplus in the Sheriff's Department of $200,000. Property insurance holiday this year, WMIC, they had a surplus in funds, so they reduced our levy, and then their anticipation that we're going to have a health insurance surplus. We budgeted for $300,000 in a 2010 budget to use the general fund. A lot of that is for Kemper Center, History Center, off the top of my head. There are certain areas that we are anticipating shortfalls. The biggest area, it would be the sales tax deficit of $900,000. The tipping fee revenue is decreased by $300,000. That primarily has to do with the increase in tipping fees at the state level, which caused other governments that were using the Paris landfill to go elsewhere. We lost, I believe, revenues from the dog track because it closed. One uncontrollable item that we have is tax delinquencies. Our tax delinquencies in the most likely scenario are anticipated to go up by $1.5 million to a level of about $8 million. Just looking below, our general fund, without regard to tax delinquencies that are uncontrollable, would be at 7.29%. The county board in prior resolutions has a stated policy that they would like to see that be at 17%. But for the tax delinquencies, which are uncontrollable, essentially those tax delinquencies are receivables on our books that it's an asset of the county, but it's not counted in the general fund. It's almost if those funds are restricted. When the tax delinquencies come down, when the economy gets better, those dollars are going to slide back to the general fund. If we counted those, the general fund without the tax delinquency increases, we would be at 15%. So at that point, that's something that when we went to the bond council or the bonding agencies or the grading agencies, they looked upon that. And speaking of that, I believe we're going there in September to the rating agencies down in Chicago, in the beginning of September. You will note, and we're going to be acting on this resolution this evening, one of the positive things is there's a $1 million levy reduction coming forward. Earlier, the county executive asked the departments to come up with revenues or cuts in expenditures of at least $1 million in anticipation of budget shortfalls. Because of that, it's at this point in time, it's likely that our general fund is going to end the year at $4.5 million. We started the year at $6.2 million. We have $1.5 million, if you will, of an uncontrollable tax delinquencies. That puts us at $4.7 million, but for that. So without regard to tax delinquencies, we may be $200,000 in the hole. So in spite of everything so far, I think the administration is on top of it, and obviously we're going to continue to watch it as we go forward. We also received the CABA report. We have revolving loan funds that CABA manages for Kenosha County. They've reported that at this point in time that there are no delinquencies in the revolving loan funds. They have several projects underway where they have financing commitments, and they have sufficient funds available to continue to borrow money to those businesses and job growth opportunities at preferable rates. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other supervisors wishing to make a report? Anyone? Supervisor Underhill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Saturday, August 7th, I had the pleasure of participating in the first annual Southport Light Station event on Simmons Island. Although there was many events going on that day, I was there for one reason, the pie eating contest. The contest consisted of 6 county and city officials. Mayor Keith Bosman, Alderman Ruffalo, myself for the county board, 1 deputy, 1 police officer, 1 firefighter, and 1 person from the History Center. The rules were 12-inch pie, blueberry, double whipped cream, 15 minutes for the first one to eat all their pie, no hands. I won the contest with 8 minutes to spare, with Alderman Ruffalo a close second. And a mess. A good time was had by all. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you weren't out of town. I think you would have gave me a run for my money.
Well, I'm certainly appreciative that you did so well. There was some talk of censure if you didn't
And I got
perform.
a trophy,
So.
too.
Apparently, we'll have to get a trophy case in the budget for 2011. Thank you, Supervisor Underhill. Any other supervisor comments? Now, I recognize there's going to be a rush for next year's event. It'll be first come, first served, so call me early. Seeing no other supervisor comments, we will move on. Clerk.
County Executive Appointments. Dean R. Troyer to serve on the Kenosha County Zoning Board of Adjustments.
I refer Mr. Troyer's appointment to the Land Use Committee.
Ordinances, 1 reading. 4, from Land Use Committee regarding J&L Drizzle LLC owner, Keith Drizzle agent, requesting a comprehensive plan amendment from Farmland Protection District to Suburban Density Residential District in the town of Paris. Submitted by Land Use Committee. Brunig, yes. Esposito excused. Kohlmeyer, yes. Underhill, yes. Decker, yes.
Supervisor Brunig.
Move ordinance number 4.
Ordinance 4 moved by Supervisor Brunig, seconded by Supervisor Kohlmeyer. Supervisor Brunig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our first comprehensive plan amendment to the Smart Growth Plan adopted by the Kenosha County Board on April 20th of 2010. This property is located on the south side of County Trunk Highway N, which is 38th Street, approximately 1 mile west, or I'm sorry, 0.1 mile west of 120th Avenue. The comprehensive plan amendment would allow a rezoning from Farmland Protection District to Suburban Density Residential District in the town of Paris, and the town of Paris recommended approval of the request.
Any supervisor wishing to speak on Ordinance 4? Seeing no lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.
Ordinance 5, from Land Use Committee regarding J&L Drizzle LLC owner, Keith Drizzle agent, requesting rezoning from A1 Agricultural Preservation District to R2 Suburban Single Family Residential District in the town of Paris. Submitted by Land Use Committee. Brunig, yes. Esposito excused. Kohlmeyer, yes. Underhill, yes. Decker, yes.
Supervisor Brunig.
Move ordinance number 5, Mr. Chairman.
Ordinance 5 moved by Supervisor Brunig, seconded by Supervisor Underhill. Supervisor Brunig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is the same one as the previous one. This rezoning would allow for a land division splitting off approximately 2 acres with an existing residence for a family member, and the town of Paris recommended approval of this request also.
Any comments on Ordinance 5? Supervisor Clark.
I just have a question through the chair to the chairman of the committee. Can you educate me as to why couldn't we just do one resolution, or to go right to the residential zoning?
This is due to the state mandates that when we had to put together our smart growth plan, this is the way that it has to be done now.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Supervisor Clark?
That's good.
Any other questions? Seeing no lights, all those in favor of ordinance 5 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Again, motion carries.
Ordinance 6, from Land Use Committee regarding Bradley Potter and Rebecca Potter Hill Revocable Trust, requesting rezoning from R3 Urban Single Family Residential District and C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District to R3 Urban Single Family Residential District and C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District in the town of Salem. Land Use Committee, Brunig, yes. Esposito excused. Colmeyer, yes. Underhill, yes. Decker, yes.
Supervisor Brunig.
Move ordinance number 6.
Ordinance 6 moved by Supervisor Brunig, seconded by Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Brunig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is located on the north side of 121st Street, approximately 450 feet south of the intersection of County Trunk Highway JF. The rezoning would allow a reconfiguring of the residential and conservancy zoning on the subject parcel to allow a residential addition. The staff field investigation of the property supports this request, and the town of Salem recommended approval of the request also.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing no lights, all those in favor of ordinance 6, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm right, 6, signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Again, motion carries.
Resolutions, one reading. 39, from Administration and Finance Committees, a resolution to approve the successor labor agreement between Kenosha County and Local 990 Clerical. Administration, Noble, yes. Eckerness, yes. Alverman, yes. Gale Gens, yes. Celebre, yes. Finance, Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Singer, yes. Eckerness, yes.
Supervisor Eckerness.
I move Resolution 39.
Resolution 39 moved by Vice Chairman Eckerness, seconded by Supervisor Clark. Vice Chair Eckerness.
Ordinance 39 is a renewal of the 990 clerical contract, and it calls for 0 raises in the succeeding 2 years. It appears to be a very good contract for all sides concerned. The Director of Human Resources is here, and he can answer any questions. The Human Services Director is here, and he can answer any questions concerning this.
Before we get into any discussion, if there is any, I just want to point out the memo that's on your desk, addressed to myself. You've all been copied this evening. Question was raised relative to a no layoff clause in the contract, and whether or not that is in opposition to the budget language, which is a policy about contracted positions, and should a contract, a grant-funded position, should the grant go away, whether or not that grant-funded position is in jeopardy of being held on, when the county policy is that if the grant goes away, so does the position. The county executive has addressed that issue in this letter. If there is further discussion, we can certainly have it here this evening. I guess I'll leave it at that for the time being. Supervisor Clark.
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be beneficial to the board to have Mr. Riedel have a brief overview of the contract first.
Unless there's opposition, I will recognize Mr. Riedel.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to begin by thanking 990 Clerical, represented here by 3 of their members. It was a brief, by our standards, and very collegial series of meetings that resulted in the current contract. Very briefly, I'll run down some of the highlights. It's a 3-year term. As Supervisor Eckerness already pointed out, there will be no increase in the wage classification schedules for 2011 and 2012. The unit, like all of our employees, will receive a 2% increase on 12/19/2010.
Significant for the county is two changes in the layoff language. The first is a redefinition of divisions and departments, which will make it less complicated should the county need to engage in reduction of force with the employees of 990 Clerical. And then the impact of that redefinition is included if you have this under 6.4. Numbers 9 and 10 in your handout are changes in the probationary period. That is significant to the county as well. It increases the probationary period for new hires and one specific wage classification of a very complicated job to up to 6 months. There are some other changes in vacation selection and other things which we ask for the purpose of better management of these employees. We have created a side letter for the term of the contract which formalizes a previous county board policy which permits 5 unpaid days to be taken off by all of our employees. The significance of the side letter is it outlines an improved management process for that. The no layoff guarantee has already been mentioned. We agree that no employees, and I stress employees, will be laid off before June 30th, 2012. We also agreed to independently arbitrate an issue on OPEB liability. That's post-retirement benefits for us. For those of you who are going down to Chicago, that will be part of your discussion, is how well we have done in lowering our liability for post-retirement benefits. One of the things we are looking to change in all our contracts is to, for new employees only, eliminate a benefit which allows for fully paid health insurance between the ages of 60 and 65 if you have served in the county for 15 years. We need to get that out in order to reduce our OPEB liability. It will improve the borrowing power of Kenosha County, and again, that will be discussed by those of you who are going down to Chicago in September. I am more than happy to answer any questions you have about any aspect of this contract.
Any members of the board have a question for Mr. Riedel? Supervisor Zerban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Mr. Riedel. I do have a question. You did make a point of stressing the word employee when you
Right.
were reviewing this. Are there persons that would be subject to this agreement that would not fall into the category of employee?
No, the discussion that we had at Finance Committee and somewhat last night at Administration Committee as well is a concern about, as Chairman Molinaro pointed out, the county board's policy that says if we have contracted employees, if we have contracted positions, that they go away if the grant that funds them goes away. And during the course of the conversation, I made the point that what we were talking about is employees, people, is what we agree not to lay off. It does not prevent the county from managing itself with respect to vacated positions, resignations, terminations, retirements. It does not limit our opportunity to reassign employees under certain circumstances. It does not limit our opportunity to keep positions unfunded for a period of time in order to make up a budget shortfall, similar to what we've just accomplished, already outlined by the chairman on the mid-year adjustment for the budget. And so what I was attempting to emphasize is the no layoff guarantee is for the people working in positions, it does not limit our ability to manage the positions in which they work.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, because I'm not sure what exactly the question was, but so you are suggesting then that a grant-funded position is an employee?
No, I'm saying a grant-funded position requires an employee, clearly. But when the grant goes away, that we respect the county board's position. There are multiple ways of managing that situation. The union members who are here have participated with the county in managing the only 2 grant-funded 990 clerical employees that we have.
and that will be resolved by mutual agreement before the end of the year. So we are dealing with no employees commencing in 2011 that are funded by grant money. When you want to talk about grant money, and I don't mean to go on, but most of our grant-funded employees are unrepresented employees, and they sign an individual contract with the county which specifically states by board policy that if the grant funding goes away, their job will be eliminated and they will be laid off.
Thank you. Anything else, Supervisor? Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Mr. Riedel. I have looked at the finance section of this document. I'd just like to hear it from you directly. What will the bottom line cost be in terms of wage increase from the present at the end of this 3-year contract as it's stated here?
The 2% increase will result in, it's in there, I'll get there, 200, hang on, $276,000 in increased wages and benefits. However, that same amount of money, or slightly less, about $250,000, is being saved by having 0 increases in years 2 and 3. So the $270,000 increase, the 2% that we have, will be giving all employees.
That's wages and benefits over the 3-year term?
Yes.
Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you. I have a quick question through the chair to Mr. Riedel regarding paragraph 16. It's marked as 16. It states the parties agree to review reclassification requests unconditionally in 2011 for ESS workers, judges, clerks, paralegals. What actually are they looking at in this?
It's not unusual for us to meet with unions if they feel that selected positions are underpaid based on comparables and the work requirements. And so the union has identified those jobs that are listed in that article as jobs that they would like to look at. And so we're always willing to meet with the union. They do the jobs. They have a good sense of what is required. If in fact those jobs have changed significantly, then we would consider proposing to the board through the budgetary process reclassifications for those jobs. So it is an opportunity for us to sit down with the union and discuss exactly what those individual jobs are doing and whether or not they deserve consideration for more or less money.
Okay. So, I mean, that was my main point, is it could go either way, correct? I mean, it's
Sure.
not just...
It could go either way.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to begin by commending the members of 990 and the administration for coming in with a fiscally responsible contract. The 2% is in line with all of the other bargaining units for 2010, holding them at a freeze for 2011 and 12 during these tough economic times is certainly appreciated. There were certainly concessions, or they're working on the OPEB liability, health insurance concessions. So from that standpoint, it's a good contract. I supported it in committee. I certainly have had concerns with a guarantee of no layoffs through June 30th, 2012. As I look around at my clients and many businesses in the community, I see employees taking cuts in benefits, cuts in pay, with no guarantee of a layoff. So the issue of the guarantee of no layoffs in committee came up. Does that contradict a stated policy of the county board? When we voted on this, we weren't sure whether it was or wasn't. We had an opinion from the Corporation Council that indicates that this contract or this agreement, side letter agreement, prevails over the stated policy of the county board. And that raised the question with the administration, and the memo with the county executive. There are 2 positions in this 990 clerical that are grant-funded positions, as I understand it. In the event that we would lose grant funding, it's my understanding that other people may be moved around, but these 990 clerical positions would have an opportunity to, we'll say, bump into another job or do other work. Is that correct, Mr. Riedel?
There's a very specific agreement with 990 clerical as to how that goes. Would you like me to explain that?
I would, yes.
Sure. The 2 positions that we're talking about were funded with ARROW money, money that came from the federal government. At that time, we saw an opportunity to enhance, improve, if you will, child support services by establishing new positions that could be funded by the ARROW money for the length of time that ARROW money was available, and we know that now to be December 31st, 2010. At the same time, recognizing the board's policy on grant funding, we discussed with the union what would happen to those 2 people when the grant funding went away. One of those folks had a position which was funded. We vacated the position. She is being paid through ARROW money presently, and the county is saving the money that was associated with her job. The job is no less important. It was an enhancement of those duties that was being funded by ARRA. She will return to her job when the funding goes out. The other will be permitted to bump into to use the bumping process to get a job, and will be afforded the opportunity to test for a vacant child support and currently vacant child support position, which we will be filling late this year. So we have contingencies.
Thank you. Supervisor Clark?
So I just want to continue on. For the new supervisors, or the benefit of the new supervisors on the board, we have a budget policy resolution every year with our budget, and it's probably the more teeth to the budget than the actual numbers. And that budget policy resolution, and I'm just going to read it, it says, "Be it further resolved that except in the case of specific action by the county board," in this case there is a specific action, "all positions included in the budget which are fully or partially grant funded shall be terminated if the grant is terminated and alternative non-levy funding is not available." The one thing I learned from being on this county board, and I have to credit it, I've heard Supervisor Rose say this on numerous occasions, and it's worth hearing again. On the county board, if you want something done, you do it through resolution, you do it through ordinance, or you do it through policy. I sit in committee meetings or various different things, and I hear we should, or we want to make sure that they do this, and it really needs, I want to propose an amendment to put that in the actual resolution. So I'm going to propose an amendment before I read it. It's to the resolution. It's not to the contract. It is essentially stating that we have a budget policy resolution and incorporating that portion in there, number one. And number two, it is reaffirming our position on that budget policy resolution, number one. And number two, it is recognizing the county executive's memo, which that memo essentially says, I just got to find it, whereas it states that the successor agreement is presented to the board with confidence that it can be managed, respecting both the board's grant job position and that no layoff agreement with the union. I think it's real important that we, number one, recognize that that policy is out there, and number two, at this time, because it's in a contract, we also recognize the administration through the executive, his representation, that he can comply with that policy. So that's what this amendment's going to do. It's I'll say it's rather lengthy or wordy, and Edie, I will give you a copy of what this is here. But it says, whereas, the amendment down on the last whereas the 2009 Kenosha County Budget Policy Resolution resolves, and it's that statement that I first read you, that except in the case of specific action by the county board, all positions included in the budget which are fully or partially grant funded shall be terminated if the grant is terminated and alternative non-levy funding is not available. Now therefore be it resolved that the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors reaffirms the 2009 Budget Policy Resolution as it pertains to grant-funded jobs and recognizes the county executive's memo to the chairman, to Chairman Molinaro dated August 16th, 2010, wherein it states that the successor agreement is presented to the board with confidence that it can be managed, respecting both the board's grant job position and the no layoff agreement with the union.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Michael. Anything else, Supervisor Clark?
No, thank you.
On the amendment, anyone wishing to speak on the amendment? I have one light right now from Supervisor Elverman. Would you like to speak on the amendment?
Sure.
Supervisor Elverman.
I eventually would anyway, so. I was going to speak on a couple of the issues Supervisor Clark did, and I thank him for all the information. We had some discussion last night at the Administration Committee on those items. I see no problem with this amendment. I don't think it would have any teeth. The reason I don't think it would have any teeth is that we're relying on a memo to yourself, Mr. Chairman, from the county executive saying he thinks that they could manage this. So if you need that to go to sleep tonight, I guess it's fine. The thing that the county board needs to do is to know there's a chance this could go sour. Maybe not in a large way. Discussion we had last night, and I asked Mr. Riedel, neither of us knew the numbers, but now I guess, Bob, you know, it was $170-some thousand, or that's what I mentioned last night.
It's approximately $250,000 per year.
That we're saving.
Yeah, right.
So my mention was we've got a lot of $100,000 employees. So if you take two of these grant-funded things, all of a sudden for this whole large group, we didn't save a thing. If we all of a sudden have to keep them, and their grants are pulled, lost. So it's a little bit of a card flip for the county board. The amendment is great, but I don't see any teeth at all. It acknowledges that we have our other resolution from 2009, and it acknowledges that Mr. Cruiser will try not to let it go sour. But other than that, it's some nice language. I was, even after my questions last night, going to vote in favor of this evening because I don't see the chance of a big downside, but I was going to speak on this tonight so the full county board knows there is a chance for a downside, or at least no gains at all on this contract if they can't bump someone, if the grant position is absolved, and if it causes someone else in these economic times for each division is experiencing something different than the next. The highway department is experiencing, because they're a small department, the problems of being mostly levy funded. Human Services is mostly federal and grant funded, $80 million compared to $3 million for golf and things. So they're seeing a big problem. Clerical may not see a big problem, but each department has to be looked at differently. If we continue to allow and put this type of language into each of our contracts, and we have other contracts coming up and other ones that are done, we could get caught in this grant thing. And I, in this one, see no problem, but I want everyone to be aware. Each employee is about $100,000. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is an issue that we should be very crystal clear with ourselves as well as the unions, and we shouldn't leave the meeting this evening with various interpretations or hopes that it will all work out in the end. The original reason for the resolution, which is of very long standing, was that if a new job was created, as it usually would be created with grant funding, that if that grant funding went away, we would not then come in and fund it automatically. We, of course, had that option to do it, but there was no guarantee. We don't want to change that policy. Now, I understand that these jobs are slightly different in the sense that apparently these were not newly created positions, but rather positions which were in existence and funded through grant money in substitution of that which ordinarily the county board would have funded. That's a little different situation. But I don't think that we should retreat from the general proposition here that if a job has been newly created by grant money, that there is no guarantee that this board will automatically fund that position. And I am a little unclear when I read this memo precisely what this memo does to that proposition. If we are saying that somehow, some way we are going to fund a position and disregard our old policy, you're digging yourself a very, very large hole for the future here. So I think we need to have some clarification from the administration on this point. I would like to know what Supervisor Clark's thinking is on this, but let's not leave this meeting tonight being unclear.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Clark?
Just briefly, my thinking on this is we have two positions that go away. I believe the administration is saying there are two positions that will go away, but it will not be 990 clerical. I think that's the way I interpret the administration's position. We're going to be down two if we lose funding for two positions. Are we going to lose two positions, Mr. Riedel?
I guess I'm not 100%
If we lose funding for
when the ERA funding goes away, the two jobs, they are both child support enforcement specialists, will also go away. The employees holding those jobs, one will return by agreement with the board to the funded position that she held in the past, and the other will have bumping rights and the ability to test for and potentially qualify for a currently vacant child support enforcement position.
Is that position a 990 position?
Yes. Both of them are 990 positions.
So when they bump these other people, where are those other people going? Or are we filling
As I mentioned, the child support enforcement specialist is vacant. The office associate position to which the first employee is to return is also vacant. We saved the funding in 2010 and applied that toward budget relief, although Al would have to verify that.
Okay.
There are no other 990 clerical employees who are contracted, other than those two.
I'm going to ask this question for maybe a little further clarification. The current position that is funded by ERA, we vacated a position to take over the funding from ERA.
Correct.
Was it the intent at that point that that position would be, which is currently frozen, would be refilled with this employee when the ERA funding left?
Yes.
Was that was made clear, I'm assuming, within the grant language?
Yes.
The second position we were talking about is a child support position that you would like to fund that's currently vacant.
There is a vacant position which is funded. An employee has moved from the child support enforcement position to a management position. Her job is available and funded, and we would fill that through the normal course of action. This employee will have an opportunity to qualify for that. The employee has been working in child support enforcement
and depending her ability to pass the test, she would qualify for that job. And through a normal course of filling funded jobs, that job would be filled, and there would be a place for that, the displaced, if you will, employee to go.
So the board understands, will you fill that position if the ERA funding continues, the second position we're talking about? If the ERA funding continued, would you fill that second position?
Yes.
You would?
If the ERA funding continued into next year, for example,
Yes.
and we were going to continue taking advantage of it,
Yes.
quite likely I would fund that position. I would fill the vacant position knowing that other opportunities or other child support enforcement positions would be coming up and becoming vacant in the future.
So then you would go to 3,
No,
essentially?
it would still be 2 to 2. Well, actually, it'd go down to 1.
I didn't quite understand that math, but,
2, we have 2, and 2 would continue.
all right, again, I'm just trying to make it clear, so I'm only asking factual questions here.
Right.
We have 2 ERA-funded positions.
Correct.
I understand the first one fully.
Okay.
The second one, there is a position that is not filled currently,
Currently vacant, but funded.
but funded.
Yes.
It's your intention, with or without ERA, to fund that third position, or the current funded but vacant county position, with or without ERA? You intend
We will hold
to-
that position until the ERA funds go away. We have, in effect, ERA funds have trained this person
Okay.
to be a child support enforcement specialist.
I'm now
We would
clear.
take advantage of that.
Thank you. Supervisor Gentz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought I knew where my thoughts were before we started this conversation. Now I'm kind of a little mixed up, but through the chair to Mr. Riedel, it's always, first of all, anything that was grant funded that we approved a position for, and you wanted to refund it, as there have been some concerns just automatically refunding a position when the grant money goes away, that would still have to come back before the board, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, because it would
Yeah,
be a
we can't
monetary.
use,
Right.
I mean, if we have grant funds funding a position, we can't leave that position and refund it with other money without coming back to you.
Correct, okay.
Finance.
So, I mean, we always have the oversight to look at if you're going to try to fund something after the grant money goes away. Am I understanding that correctly?
If we were to continue the position as it is, and the grant funding would go away, and we would choose to continue the position, we would have to come to you and have that funding.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Again, to be clear, the grant employee does not go away under this current contract.
Well, I would clarify that to say not necessarily. Okay? There are probably 18 grant-funded employees who are unrepresented and who have individual contracts with the county. Many of them are in the health department.
Right.
Okay, can I keep talking now that you raised that? The way I've always assumed that we did these grant positions, now if we want some position to be there after the grant money goes away, we can create the position. But I always thought that they signed a contract to take that grant position with the grant money, knowing that when it runs out, they're done. I mean, obviously, they are a county employee, and we try to move them around, but that job ceases. Okay. Yeah. What? Okay, explain that to me then. Whoever, Mr. Riedel. Explain why that's not true.
Why, what's not true?
I don't know. Terry just said that's not true. So through the chair to Terry, why is that not true? Supervisor Rose, I apologize.
Is that appropriate? Supervisor Rose.
All right, here's where the way I understand it is the way I see it. Generally speaking, if you create a job, a brand-new job with a grant, you bring in 2 new people. I think that's the theory of our long-standing policy that has been mentioned here. In this case, we didn't do that. We took 2 existing people who are working regular jobs, who are union people, and we put them in these grant grant-funded jobs to save ourselves money. That's different than the usual and customary way we have done things. Now the problem comes in from the back end. The jobs are no longer funded by federal money. The job is supposed to go away. The person is supposed to go away. And when they took those jobs, if they were brand new people filling the grant positions, they would understand that. But we didn't do that. We filled their position. They had positions with the county, and in order to save the county money, they agreed to take these positions. So where they're saying, well, in fairness, we should be able to go back to our old positions. It seems fair. The problem comes in then, what if there's nobody to bump, or if they do bump somebody, and we have here a provision in the side letter, number 18, there is a guarantee of no layoffs through June 30, 2012. What happens? We are obligated to fill those create two positions, whether we call them, they're the former grant-funded positions. And now we have created our own problem by virtue of the fact that we did it in the very first place. It was out of sync. It was out of order. We had two new positions originally, and instead of filling it with two new people, we took current employees. I think that's the problem. All the letter from the county executive is saying is that I hope we can all work it out, and it'll work out. And it might work out, as Supervisor Elverman says, but it might not work out either, and we might end up doing exactly what Supervisor Gens says here. Well, we can't create new jobs. We've created a new job right here. It doesn't have to come back to the board because we've said no layoffs through June 30, 2012. They have two jobs. They are created. We must fund them. That's the problem. So, you know, we've inartfully, I think, drafted number 18. And I think what we meant was we weren't going to lay off current employees. I don't think we should put current employees in grant-funded positions as we did to save the county money in the first instance, because we've created a problem at the end of the case, so to speak, here. So I think that's the best I can explain it here, but I certainly can't support what we're doing here because we may have created a situation where it's going to cost us a lot of money in the end.
I believe Supervisor Riedel wanted to respond. Do you still want to respond to that?
Well, sure.
I
thought
have a
Supervisor
quick question that you can add into your response since I still have the floor. If we go into a grant agreement with somebody and they're going to take one of these newly created grant positions and we are going to not continue the job that they're leaving, I mean, that's perfectly noticed and that's all understood at the time that they moved to that position, correct?
Right. Let me just,
okay.
And again, I apologize because I have a tendency to talk too much, but a very good example is a federally funded program that we have that's called the Lead Grant Abatement Program. It is funded through the Health Department, and most of you know what it does. It employs 4 employees. There is a director, there are 2 risk managers, people who go into homes and assess the lead risk, and there is an administrative assistant. All 4 of those positions are grant funded. All 4 of those positions and the employees who hold them sign an agreement. It is an agreement that outlines what they will be paid. Frequently, that is driven by the grant itself, as many of you know. It also explains under what circumstances they can access the health insurance plan, what their ANS benefits will look like, what their vacation is. And the last thing that they sign and agree to is, and understand, that if we lose the funding for the lead grant abatement program, they lose their job. Simple. Done. Job goes away, person goes away. Okay? Now, if we wanted to continue as a county to continue the lead abatement program, because it was good for the people of Kenosha County. But the federal funding went away. We would have to come before the county board with 4 jobs, and you would have to fund them through your normal process. What makes the ERA funding unique is that we identified a need within child support that could be improved and met through this ERA funds because it qualified for that grant money. That is why this is quite unique for us to take 990 clerical employees, vacate 2 jobs, put them in those jobs. But I'm not going to deceive the board. There are 2 jobs that are 990 clerical jobs. And I don't know that that will never happen again. But there's none in the foreseeable future, and it is unusual, frankly, to have 990 clerical jobs that are grant funded. Most of our grant funded positions are individually contracted with employees who understand what the consequences of losing the funds are.
So just to clarify, there's no way that a job can be created when grant funding leaves without our approval. I mean, people can slide back to holes that were there where we could save money, but they're not going to create new jobs. So I guess I'm clear and I'm okay with that. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Supervisor Gable.
I guess, if I understand this, these were 2 union people that moved into the,
Supervisor, if you could speak in your mic, please.
these were 2 union employees that moved into this grant
excuse me, what's your point?
Mr. Chairman, there's an amendment on the floor, and I believe I'm the only one that's spoken on that amendment.
The question on the 2 positions, whether they are represented or not, I think is pertinent to the amendment that Supervisor Clark has proposed. To me, it's directly to the point, so I'll allow the question, but I appreciate your point. Supervisor Gable.
If I understand this, you took 2 union employees and put them into this grant position. And they should have the right to retreat back because it wasn't an upgrade, they just moved them. I mean, you always have the right to retreat. It's a golden parachute, I guess. I mean, am I right? I mean, these were union jobs.
Yes.
The two people
Child
were
support
union.
enforcement specialist is a union job identified and classified in the 990 clerical contract. The advantage of the ERA funds is it allowed us to create 2 unique child support jobs which have to be filled by union people because in the agreement with the county, we agree, and 990 clerical agrees, that this type of work will be done by union employees. Okay? So these 2 jobs are created. The 2 individuals who took those jobs and performed this unique work that was provided for under the federal grant vacated their jobs. We chose not to fill those jobs and save the money that was funding those jobs, and now one of those can return to her job and the other will fill a vacant job, which is kind of the trickle down from that second action. Okay?
Thank you.
That's all? Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Decker.
I guess I have to say that these are like 2 different issues under the same umbrella. One issue...
I am going to ask, if I can interrupt you, that we stay on the amendment as best we can.
Right.
Go ahead.
And this brings up the amendment about the county executive's memo. Any grant-funded person that we hire, is it correct to assume that normally, under normal circumstances, they are non-union workers?
Correct.
Okay, so if when we hire in the future, hire new people under grant funding, can we ensure or make sure when we hire them that they are non-union workers, not subject to the layoff clause?
No. I can't assure that.
Can we, like,
if we
I
got
know
a
you
grant,
cannot assure it, but can we, when we are deciding upon this grant funding, can we know, okay, this person would be union or this person would not?
yes,
It would be in advance of our vote, we would know.
yes.
Okay. So, and then the second issue is the issue of the 2 that we're discussing that are union now. My understanding is one worked, or both of them worked for the county before. They held they hold similar positions now, slightly similar.
Yes.
Well, slightly different, but it's just the difference is the way we funded them, because we funded them by the grants. And when we took them off the county payroll, we didn't fill their positions. We left them open and funded them with the grants. And now that we don't have the grants anymore, they're wanting to go back into their unfunded grant positions.
We have
Is that
agreed
correct?
with the union that they can go back. Yes.
Right, but it's not like we're creating 2 new positions. We're putting them back to the positions they were in, or
Correct.
bumping and,
Correct.
it's not like we're adding employees.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Eckerness.
It is my understanding that the way you plan to manage this is you are going to try to maintain 2 levy-funded positions within the union and open, so that when the grants run out, these positions will be available to the grant-funded positions.
Am I going to manage that in 2011 when I don't have any grant jobs? No. Have we already agreed to manage it this way? Yes. And we've agreed to manage it this way because there was an advantage to the county to have 2 of its employees paid through federal funds and to be able to save the levy money that funded the 2 jobs to which they will return. We would fund those jobs next year under any circumstance, and these people will return to them. This is unique, but as I said before, I intend to be forthcoming with the board. These are 2 jobs that are 990 clerical. It is not a normal situation to have this. However, you know, to think that we will somehow fund and leave vacant 2 positions just in case we get a grant and we have some place for them to fall, I would say no, that would not happen. And it depends upon the nature of the work, and it depends upon the intent of the grant, and it depends upon whether we can individually contract with these employees, as we do with most. It's an unusual situation that we would get a grant for work that is contractually agreed to with 990 clerical or any union for that matter.
State your point.
Just want to make it clear that in our budget, we have budgeted positions that are defunded.
Correct.
Or a vacancy adjustment. So if we have certain positions available and they're defunded, the dollars aren't there. In this case, they may have some dollars there in the 2011 budget because they anticipate that this is going to happen. But there's a vacancy adjustment, and then there's a position defunding in the budget directors here, but I just wanted to make that clear. I don't know that it's new money. When we heard about the highway department, that there's a person that retired, they have 14 people out on layoff, and the administration at this point in time is not filling that position, saving county money. But so there's a budgeted defunding or vacancy.
Understood.
Can I clarify? We could not put those employees in a defunded position because by your action, the board would have to fund them. So any position that is defunded at the beginning of the budget year stays that way without board action.
Correct.
So we could not return them to a defunded job. I think that's what you were saying. The fact is, in these 2 individual cases, these are funded positions that were vacated.
But you continue to fund them.
Well, they will continue to be funded because
Understood.
they're deemed necessary. We just saw an opportunity to save the money.
Understood. I forget who had the floor. I don't even see who had the floor. I'm sorry. Vice Chair Eckerness did. Supervisor Rose.
To a question to Mr. Riedel, when these 2 employees took these jobs, they didn't sign an agreement that understanding that the job would be terminated, as you described in the usual customary type of grant-funded position?
The union signed an agreement as to what would happen to them. They did not sign an agreement that they would lose their job if the funding went away. In fact, they were made to understand what would happen when the funding went away. Originally, the ERA funds were to have run out on 10/31/2010. We've recently got them extended. So for those 2 employees, there's an agreement with the union that says exactly what I've said several times.
Was that brought before the board or the Finance Committee at the time? Because that strikes me as in contradiction to our longstanding policy in the first place.
I don't know if those are funded, John.
I need you to go to the microphone, please, Mr. Jansen. Thank you.
All the stimulus positions were brought in front of committee and approved.
Well, that could be, I understand that, and there's no dispute about that, but I don't think what was ever brought before the board was the methodology that this was being carried out, which was really in contradiction to our policy in the first place, because it has always been clear that with the grant-funded position, this is a new job filled by a new person on a temporary basis. And the problem that we are now facing is that we didn't follow that original policy, and we filled it with union people, and now we realize, in fairness, that they should be able to go back to their position. I agree with that proposition. They should be able to go back to their position, but it's all, you can't fulfill. The problem comes in by virtue of the fact that they can bump somebody else in their division. And we have a no layoff policy here. So it may come about that we have to create two new positions. That is a possibility. Because we created two grant positions and we filled it in a way which is generally not the way we do it. So don't kid yourself. We might be faced with the possibility of creating and paying for two positions. That is a strong possibility. And all the memo is saying, we'll try to avoid that. That's fine. But be aware that it may cost us, I believe, $100,000 per position. That's no saving.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am supportive of the Chairman of the Finance Committee's amendment, and I appreciate his eye for continuity. But I do have one question on the amendment, and I don't know who best can answer it. When we do approve these grants, like the Recovery Act funds for these two positions, my question is, how much of this position movement was spelled out when we approved the acceptance of those funds, whether it's to the budget director, to the personnel director, or whomever through the chair is best qualified to answer that question?
Gentlemen?
John and I were trying to figure out if it was, and we don't frankly remember. Every position was filled. I would say that this action saved the county $200,000 as opposed to cost them, however. This particular method of filling those jobs. But I don't know if we fully outlined the agreement with the union or not, and the union is nodding their head saying that in fact we did.
I think the question, if I may, is was the scenario fully outlined to the committees and the county board when it came through the process?
I believe so. I believe we were very transparent in what we were doing, and let everyone know what this money was going to be used for, which was an enhancement of service, the folks that were going to fill it. We had Goodwill employees taking some positions and county people taking some, and believe we spelled that out fairly clearly.
If I could, is there any need to vote on this tonight, since that seems to be a bit cloudy? I don't know if there would be anything that would be adverse to the county by not having this passed tonight, but I would certainly like to take a look at those budget modifications to accept those Recovery Act funds that particularly pertain to these two positions, just to make sure that, for continuity's sake, if that's at all possible.
Certainly, it is the will of the board, whether you pass it tonight, you amend it tonight, you send it back. That's will remain to be seen when we get to a vote. Any of those are on the table. I would say, however, that as a member of the county board, when these particular positions came along, I don't know for me that there was anything unclear about their funding and their returning to the positions. I recognize it's a little bit atypical of what we have typically done with grant-funded positions, but by no means, as far as I'm concerned, was the staff and the labor group not fully informed, or did they not fully inform us? You'll have to wrestle with whether or not it turned out to be a good decision or not. I'll leave that to the discussion. Anything else, Supervisor Hallman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Zerban. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a problem with the amendment tonight that Supervisor Clark offered up. I agree with Supervisor Elberman. I don't think it has much teeth. But I think I understand the intent behind it to provide some clarification. If we take action on this and do something that's unfavorable to these employees returning to their positions, that won't bode well for us in the future. If we have an opportunity to fund positions with other grant money, and you put employees in a position where they can't go back to their jobs, people are not going to walk up and say, yeah, I'm going to help you guys out and save you $200,000 over the next couple of years if they see how this has been done in the past and somebody loses their job over it. So I can't disagree with you more, Supervisor Rose, that we're creating positions and need to fund these positions because these people already had positions with the county prior to them moving from a levy-funded position to a grant-funded position. So I think on the resolution, I'll support it, and I hope that we can take action and get this done tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Singer.
I'll support the amendment to the resolution. I'll support the resolution. I do think that what the county did in this situation was fine. I think they need to continue to do things when they can work with the union, and the union makes a prior agreement going into the deal. They understand the ground rules, that it's perfectly fine. What they did was just fine. In fact, I would rather have the union employees in there than constantly, than have a contracted employee. In fact, I would like to see that if we do have funding in departments and we need to get rid of positions, we should be getting rid of contracted positions, not employees. And so I don't have any problem with what they did, and I'd like to see that again in the future, if it's favorable to both the union and the county. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Singer. Supervisor Rose?
Yes, I have no problem with this amendment. I think, in fairness, these employees should be able to return to their former jobs, longstanding apparently employees. I'm also, as a general proposition, opposed to layoffs. The problem comes in with the side letter, and that is number 18. We are saying up front there is a guarantee of no layoffs through June 30, 2012. And I would pledge that I would certainly, as a supervisor, oppose layoffs. But I'm not going to bind my hands or the county's finances with an absolute guarantee. Under no circumstances will we ever lay off individuals. And I would be particularly upset if I were a highway department member who was laid off, listening to the debate this evening.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. I see no other lights on the amendment. Roll call has been requested. The vote will be on Supervisor Clark's amendment. Is anyone not clear on that amendment? I'm going to ask Supervisor Clark to read it. I would be highly doubtful that the clerk and her staff got that. So Supervisor Clark, if you could read that one more time.
Sure. We're going to insert the last whereas. After the last whereas, it's going to say, whereas the 2009 Kenosha County Budget Policy Resolution resolves that except in the case of specific action by the county board, all positions included in the budget which are fully or partially grant funded shall be terminated if the grant is terminated and alternative non-levy funding is not available. And then we're going to add after that, now therefore be it resolved that the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors reaffirms the 2009 Budget Policy Resolution as it pertains to grant-funded jobs and recognizes the county executive's memo to Chairman Molinaro dated August 16th, 2010, wherein it states that the successor agreement is presented to the board with confidence that it can be managed, respecting both the board's grant job position and the no layoff agreement with the union.
Anyone have a question on the reading, the language only? If not, roll call has been requested. Press your P and plus if you are in favor of the amendment, P and minus if you are opposed. The amendment carries 27-0. Back on the resolution as amended. Anyone wishing to speak on the resolution as amended? Seeing no lights. All those in favor of the resolution 39 as amended signify by saying aye. Roll call's been requested. All those in favor, P and plus. Those opposed, P and minus. Again, this is resolution 39 as amended. Motion carries 26-1. Strangely enough, I was the one, and that is not a correct vote. So I want. I'm so busy telling you what to do. My intention was to vote in favor, and publicly I will say that. No, honest. I would like to just make this point to staff, Mr. Riedel, Corporation Counsel. You have heard the county board on this issue. You'll have other contracts coming forward. I would ask that we're going to have some labor groups that will not maybe have more than 2 grant-funded positions, maybe affect more than 2 employees. I'd like you to keep that in mind as you go forward and draft language and side letters, et cetera. So there's clearly some concern on the county board floor. Point out to the 990 group, it's not about that organization, it's about the policy that the county board has had in place for a while. Clerk.
Resolution 40 from Buildings and Grounds and Highway and Parks Committees, a resolution to approve the appointment of Ray Arbit as Director of the Department of Public Works, submitted by Buildings and Grounds. Grady, yes. Esposito, yes. Colmeyer, yes. Grulich, yes.
Supervisor Grady.
Move resolution 40.
Resolution 40 has been moved by Supervisor Grady. Bear with me for 1 second. Seconded by Supervisor Elverman. Nope, let me rephrase that. Seconded by Supervisor O'Day. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you tonight, you see the approval of Ray Arbit as Director of the Public Works Department. His resume is in front of you, and it's detailed to quite a fair extent. It passed our committee with unanimous vote, and for the other committee, it passed with unanimous vote with 1 abstention. So I would ask your approval this evening. I would comment to you that by an earlier email, which I believe you also received, Chairman Molinaro, Mr. Arbit would be here tonight except for a family matter where he is taking his son to college, so he could not be here this evening. So again, I ask your approval.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Zerban.
Thank you, Chairman. In light of some of the citizens' comments tonight that we heard, and without wanting an explanation on the open board floor, I was hoping maybe we might be able to refer this back to committee where some things could be maybe clarified. Table this motion or refer it back to committee. I would have some questions regarding something that was mentioned tonight in citizens' comments.
I could certainly put you in the hope column unless you'd like to make a motion.
I'll make the motion to refer this back to committee.
Moved by Supervisor Zerban, seconded by Supervisor Holman. Any discussion on the referral back to committee? Supervisor Elverman?
No, Mr. Chairman, I guess the only thing I would ask is that it be committees. It's 2 committees.
Understood. That will be the referral. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd be happy to take it back to committee if there's concern, but I'd like enumeration specifically of what topics would like to be addressed at the committee level and not just have it be general comments. Thank you.
It's my understanding, if I may, Mr. Supervisor Zerban, that there is some concern that there may or may not have been an issue between Mr. Arbit and an employee, and I guess at least a couple supervisors would like some discussion and resolution on that issue.
Is that in its entirety?
Yes.
Very well.
Anyone else on the referral? Supervisor Elverman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess I will speak on that. People that have paid attention, a few have pointed to it where I abstained on this at committee as chairman. I was going to speak on that a little bit this evening and explain the reason why I abstained as a long-serving member on the county board, not doing that very often. What I didn't want to do there was vote against. I believe Mr. Cruiser has a right to put people into positions that he wants, into those positions. I abstained because I've had a communication problem with Mr. Arbit. Didn't feel that he was serving the county board, was just serving Mr. Cruiser, and we had some problems on the Highway and Parks Committee. So the previous Highway and Parks Committee more than the current. So I would have no problem with this going back. I had a discussion with Mr. Arbit on communication 3 weeks ago, and I haven't heard from him since. So I wouldn't mind having this back at committee, and we can have some discussion on it. We do have a meeting set up for September 3rd.
Anything else?
No.
Supervisor Jeff Gentz.
Every time I've called Mr. Arbit, he's responded, and my working relationship with him has been fine. So I guess I'm not clear on what's happened here, and I'm supportive of the recommendation. So I'm going to go ahead and just vote against that.
So then if you were talking on the referral, you don't want to refer?
That's exactly what I said.
That's kind of what I thought. All right. Supervisor Clark.
I just want to ask the question, if anybody can answer, this relates to referral and whether I'm going to support it or not, whether this event happened prior to it going to the committee, where that's where we're supposed to be doing our heavy lifting. Is this event more than 2 weeks old, more than a month old, more than 2 months old that was referred to tonight?
I will allow the question to Supervisor Elverman, Chairman of the committee.
It was at the meeting previous to our 2-week-ago meeting at the Pringle Nature Center, and it is being looked at by Personnel Department. So 6 weeks ago.
So none of the, it was immediately prior to that meeting, or was the meeting a couple weeks after, where if somebody wanted to draw attention to the appointment to the committee, that they could have gone to the committee and brought that issue up at that time?
No, it was following the meeting in the parking lot. It was never brought to the committee.
So, just so I'm clear on timing, this resolution to reappoint Mr. Arbit, it happened immediately after that meeting? It happened 2 weeks before that meeting when the committee acted on it? The event that is being talked about?
I would say that the event happened before the committee.
Okay. I'm not going to support referral to the committee. I think certainly there's an opportunity to anybody to bring that to the committee when it was referenced. I certainly respect the county executive's right to appoint his people. They work at the will of the county executive, and Mr. Arbit certainly appears to be competent as a director and hold the position that he has in the position that we have appointed him to previously, or confirmed his appointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor O'Day.
Thank you, Chairman. Ray Everett's been doing an outstanding job. It went before both committees. I believe the chairman of Highway and Parks abstained. He did not say no. The other Building and Grounds, they voted 4-0 to approve it. I see no point to going back to committee. Committees did their job, and here it is tonight. Let's do it.
Thank you. Supervisor Zerban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Supervisor Clark and Supervisor O'Day, I was not aware of this prior to our committee meeting, and unfortunately I was absent at our committee meeting, but this is actually the first I had heard of it. I certainly would have addressed that in committee and sought my answers at that time, and even if I had been present for the committee meeting, I'm not sure that this was brought to anybody in our committee's attention. So we did not have the opportunity to address it, and I would appreciate the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I was unaware of this situation, but currently there's an investigation, or can we just hear what actually is going on? Has something been substantiated? Is Corp Council looking into it? Is it, I mean, I guess I'm...
The question was asked that whether or not, or reference was made that the Personnel Department was looking at it. Mr. Riedel nodded his head as in the affirmative, and at this point in time, like I would do with any other personnel matter, I'm going to leave it at the fact, yes, the Personnel Department is looking at it.
And will they make an evaluation that we can hear or find out what their outcome is? I mean, is that... No.
I trust a discipline matter between an employee is between the county. It is monitored by my office and the employee's supervisor and department head. I am conducting an investigation. I cannot share the details of that with you. There were some witnesses there that possibly could, but the outcome you will not know. If it would be up to the county executive to decide whether discipline was appropriate, and would go ahead and implement that. The only way in our world that you find out about disciplines is if they are grieved and come to the county board.
My question is then, is there a way that we would know? I mean, because what you're stating is there could actually be termination, correct? I mean, that's one of the options the county exec has. And
department heads serve at the will of the county executive. He could change a department head tomorrow if he wanted to, without any, they serve at his pleasure, and so he can do, if he wanted to change a department head, he could do that tomorrow.
I mean, my only concern is the fact that I would like to know that an investigation was completed so that we don't appoint somebody or confirm an appointment that gets retracted, or, I mean, I'd like to have a clean slate, and I understand where you're coming across, where you can't really disclose much, but I guess I feel like I'm in an awkward situation because we've heard there's something that happened. We don't know what it is, but it's out there and it's not completed yet. But as Supervisor Clark has stated, it's not like it just happened yesterday. It's something that happened a few weeks back, 6 weeks back. But I just don't feel comfortable. We don't know. I mean, if it's just games being played between labor and another individual, if it's actually something that should be substantiated and looked into. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Eckerness, Vice Chairman Eckerness.
I do not support referral. I believe that if the county executive was concerned about this incident, and I had heard there was an incident, I don't know hardly anything about it, we wouldn't have this before us tonight because it did happen some time ago. He is a at-will employee, and if the county executive finds that he needs to replace him, I'm sure he will. But at this point, I don't see any need to delay this tonight.
Thank you. Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I respect the Chair of Highway and Parks abstention, although he did highlight some issues. I'm in support of sending this back to committee because there are some outstanding issues, some matters that perhaps do need to be addressed at that level. In my dealings with Mr. Arbit, he's been a gentleman, cordial, intelligent, and I appreciate the work that he has done. So I have no doubts that with this being sent back to committee, these matters will be addressed expediently and an outcome favorable for all. In addition to that, this is no disrespect to the county executive whatsoever, but we do perform very much to the U.S. Senate an advise and consent function when it does come to these executive appointments. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Jeff Gens.
Very quick question. Even if this goes back to committee, the investigation's not going to be revealed there. Am I wrong on that? Or, I mean, even at committee, you're not going to talk about an ongoing investigation.
Correct.
So I don't even. Right? Am I correct? Yes or no?
I would yield to Frank on this, but it's the county board's purpose to establish the discipline policy under which we discipline. And the investigation of a matter is done by the personnel officers designated. And as I said before, it will be shared with the department head, who is the county executive, and any decision on discipline will be made, if appropriate. And I don't want to label this as being a disciplinary issue, but if appropriate, that would take place between the county executive and the department head. And that's as far as it will go. We will not come before the board and reveal the outcome.
Thank you. Anything else, Supervisor? Supervisor Clark.
Just talking about the rights of the county board, and maybe the corporation council can ask this. I don't support it going back to committee. However, I believe the committee can go in a closed session and request personnel information if it has to do with an appointment. Mr. Corporation Counsel?
That's you. Right. I would concur. An employee also has a right under the open meeting law to have a closed session for the purposes of presenting evidence. So to some extent, the employee has some say with respect to whether or not he wants to have a hearing in a closed session or an open session. In terms of releasing any information subsequent to a decision being made, at this point, all I would say is that would have to be released in conformity with the open meeting law and open records law.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Seeing no other lights, I'm going to ask for the vote on Resolution 40, which is a referral to Highway and Parks and Building and Grounds of the appointment of Mr. Arbit. And note that our referrals require them to come back to the board in 60 days. You may or may not have the answers you need in 60 days, but you will need to bring something back to the county board at that point in time. So the motion is referral of Resolution 40. All those in favor of referral signify by saying aye. All those in favor of referral will press their P and plus. Those opposed, P and minus. This is only on referral. Referral fails 9-17. We're now back on the original motion, originally made by Supervisor Grady. Any discussion on the issue of Resolution 40, appointment of Mr. Arbit? Supervisor Zerban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not going to support this nomination or our resolution. Not because I don't think Ray is capable or a good person. It's just I can't support it when there are questions outstanding, and when it comes to the administration or people that the administration appoints to positions, with our conduct, their conduct, we need to be above reproach. And evidently there's something that transpired that we don't have all the information and facts on, and I have to say I'm disappointed that this did not go back and we haven't had a chance to look at it further. I think that both committees deserve that, and I'm not going to support it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Supervisor Rose.
I'm going to support Mr. Arbert's appointment. I've always found him to be courteous and professional with me. I'm not familiar with this particular incident. I did vote in favor of referral back to the committee because I have a long-standing belief that we ought to respect the power and authority of the county board and its committees. We give due deference to the executive, but they must give due deference to us as well. We're an equal branch of government, and when a committee wants to review or re-review, I think that that is something to be respected. That's been decided, so on the merits, I'm going to support Mr. Arbit.
Thank you. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have weekly, if not daily, conversations with Mr. Arbit, either on the phone or via email, and I can't recall one instance where I've had incomplete communication, improper communication, or even off-the-topic discussion. There's been some questions about some recent renovations done at the job center and some contracts that were involved, and he, through his staff, was more than forthcoming and satisfied any possible question I could answer or I could ask in a timely manner. So, therefore, from my perspective as being committee chair, I would support his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor requested. If you're in favor of Mr. Arbert's appointment, P and plus. If you're opposed, P and minus. Supervisor, there we go. Motion carries 24-2 with 1 abstention. Clerk.
Resolution 41 from Finance Committee, a resolution providing for the sale of not to exceed 12,325 taxable general obligation promissory notes, Build America bonds, direct payment, submitted by Finance. Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Eckerness, yes. Singer, yes.
Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Resolution 41.
Resolution 41 moved by Supervisor Clark, seconded by Supervisor O'Day. Supervisor Clark.
Resolution 41 provides for the sale of taxable general obligation promissory notes. Previously, the county board authorized the issuance of these notes. There was, in September of 2008, we approved the issuance of $2.7 million for road improvements. In December of 2009, we issued $1,350,000 for bonds, leaving a balance of $1,350,000 for road improvements. We also, as part of our budget process, we approved the issuance of notes for $10,975,000 for the purpose of funding our capital projects. At that time, those votes required a 3/4 vote by the board, and at this time, this resolution is now authorizing the issuance to go out and sell the sale of those notes. The sale of those notes are earlier than we normally do. Normally, we'll fund our capital projects and various different things out of cash flow during the year. And then, as we did last year, go out and fund it late in the year. We received very favorable bond rating at that time. We are seeing unprecedented low rates. So the decision of our advisor, Mr. Michael Harrigan, who is still with us, is to move forward now to take advantage of these rates. I believe on your desk, he's also provided, every time we do a bond issue or we put them out, we get they recap our current bonding position. Our bonding falls within our guidelines to be under $1.10 in mill rate. I believe that's correct. And the last column out there just kind of takes a look at what's happening, fourth from the end of what's happening with our debt levy. So that's what we're doing with this resolution. I urge your approval.
Thank you, Supervisor Clark. Any other supervisors? Seeing no lights, this does require a majority vote. Roll call vote will be cast. P and plus if you're in favor, P and minus if you're opposed. Resolution 41 carries 27-0.
Resolution 42 from Finance Committee, a resolution providing for the sale of not to exceed $10,435,000 taxable general obligation public safety building bonds, submitted by Finance Committee. Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Eckerness, yes. Singer, yes.
Supervisor Clark.
I move Resolution 42.
Resolution 42 approved by, or moved by Supervisor Clark, seconded by Supervisor Jeff Gens. Supervisor Clark.
Mr. Chairman and County Board, this resolution is very similar to the last one. We are issuing bonds for the construction of the public safety building. On July 14th of 2009, the County Board authorized the issuance of the bonds in a total amount of $15,345,000. In December, we issued or sold the bonds. The total amount there was $4,910,000, leaving a balance to fund the project of $10,435,000. My comments are pretty much the same as it relates to the last resolution. I would urge your approval.
Anyone have a question? Question to Mr. Harrigan to maybe earn his money here a little bit. If not, we'll move on. Guess you're off the hook. Again, majority vote, roll call. 1 second, please. P and plus if you're in favor of Resolution 42, minus if you're opposed. Still missing 3. Supervisor Jeff Gens. Supervisor Rose. Supervisor, there we go. Motion carries 27-0.
Resolution 43 from Finance Committee, a resolution to approve mid-year budget modification. Clark, yes. O'Day, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Singer, yes. Eckerness, yes.
Supervisor Rose. I'm sorry, Supervisor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Resolution 43.
Resolution 43 moved by Supervisor Clark, seconded by Supervisor Eckerness. Supervisor Clark.
This resolution is approving a mid-year budget modification. As you all recall, the county executive previously asked the departments to reduce their expenditures or increase their revenues by $1 million. The departments have exceeded that objective by $26,495. I guess I would say some highlights or big items, and I can't, well, the Sheriff's Department came in with $500,000, increasing the revenue for the federal inmates. We are above budget considerably as to what we budgeted. That was half the haul. The revenue increase went up by $716,000. We had $310,000 in expense reductions. We're, one area there, $138,000 is reduction for the juvenile detention and the housing. I think we've been working with the judges and the courts and finding alternative solutions there. So this is an easy resolution tonight to pass. Early on in the year we indicated obviously that we were concerned with our financial position, where our reserves were going to go. the administration has acted, this will be very favorable to present to the rating agencies when we go down there in September. So I urge your approval.
Thank you. Anyone on the question? Resolution 43 requires a 2/3 vote. Those in favor, P and plus. Those opposed, P and minus. Resolution 43 carries 27-0.
Resolution 44 from Highway and Parks, a resolution to approve the appointment of Attorney David P. Wilk to the Kenosha County Traffic Safety Commission. Elverman, yes. Noble, yes. O'Day, yes. Gale Gens, yes. Michael Underhill, yes.
Supervisor Elverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move Resolution 44.
Resolution 44 moved by Supervisor Elverman, seconded by Supervisor Gale Gens. Supervisor Elverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Kenosha County Traffic Safety Commission is a very important committee that serves without pay. We have police officers, we have people familiar with highways. Mr. Wilk has been appointed as a legal member of that committee. What the committee does naturally is basically work on traffic safety issues, laws, and Mr. Wilk would serve 3 years without pay. He was interviewed by our committee. Very nice job, very nice resume, and we highly recommend him to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the question? Seeing no lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 45 from Human Service Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Supervisor Gale Gens to the Racing Kenosha Community Action Agency Board. Rose, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Arrington, yes. Gable, yes. Celebrity, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the resolution.
Resolution moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor Jeff Gens. Supervisor Rose.
I think all of us know Supervisor Gale Gens, and we support her appointment.
Thank you. Seeing no lights, Supervisor Zerban. I'm sorry, whoop, wrong side of the room. Supervisor Holman.
Can we also move 46, 47, and 48 upon being read?
Well, I would prefer not, as they are not the same committee.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Resolution 46 from Human Services Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of John T. Jansen as Director of the Department of Human Services. Rose, yes. Jeff Gens, yes. Arrington, yes. Gable, yes. Celebrity, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
I would move the appointment of John Jansen as Director of the Department of Human Services.
Resolution 46 moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor Arrington. Supervisor Rose.
I believe that the committee and the board is very satisfied with the work that John Jansen has done as the Director of the Human Services Department. He is innovative, easy to get along with, communicates well with this board, and I would urge your unanimous approval.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution carries.
Resolution 47 from Judiciary and Law Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of James Huff to serve as member of the Local Emergency Planning Committee. Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Frederick, yes.
Supervisor Michael. Resolution 47 moved by Supervisor Michael, seconded by Supervisor Haas. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I urge your support of Mr. Huff. He was a former county board supervisor. He's a retired law enforcement agent. He passed unanimously in our committee. He's a former chairman of Judiciary and Law. Very articulate. I'd urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 48 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 48 from Judiciary and Law Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Fred Eckernes to serve as a member of the Local Emergency Planning Committee. Submitted by Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Ron Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Ron Frederick, yes.
Supervisor Michael.
I move resolution number 48.
Resolution 48 moved by Supervisor Michael, seconded by Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, we have Vice Chair Eckerness on for this committee. I believe everybody is aware of who he is, what he stands for. He passed unanimously. I urge unanimous support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Supervisor Clark.
Vice Chair Elverman just turned 70, and I'm just wondering if he has enough energy to serve on this committee. I mean, Eckerness, sorry. Eckerness. No.
No response necessary. Seeing no other lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Resolution 49 from Judiciary and Law Committee, a resolution for probationary cabaret license extension for El Fracaso Tavern. Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Ron Frederick, yes.
Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move resolution number 49.
Resolution 49 moved by Supervisor Michael, seconded by Supervisor Singer. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is a resolution. In most cases, we would ask for a permanent cabaret license, but I believe everybody is aware of El Fracaso Tavern. The Sheriff's Department brought it to our attention. They brought it in as again, as a probationary cabaret license. There was no one that came to the committee with any negative information. The town of Summers did re-up its liquor license. I apologize. I was going to contact yourself, Chairman, to see if there was any concerns, as this is a establishment that is in your district, but I did not hear anything bad. Of course, there are some concerns. Looking at the report, there was an incident in which an individual was arrested with a warrant, and he was in possession of cocaine. But reviewing everything, we still believe that they are eligible for this cabaret license, so I urge your support for this. Captain Apker is here if there are any questions regarding any additional information that needs to be discussed. But again, this did pass unanimously from our committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Michael. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure everyone in this room is really familiar with El Fracaso's Tavern and its checkered past. Just to enlighten you, this is an establishment that's on the old Sheridan Road truck route. It's approximately 100 yards from the stop-and-go light, which is on the corner of Sheridan Road and the little cutoff that takes you towards 22nd Avenue. But at any rate, over the past number of years, which you can see on your tavern review reports on the following page of the resolution, and it's come before committees and this county board before. Let's just back up here. We'll take a look at the first page of this resolution. And it says, whereas the establishment known as the El Fracaso Tavern was granted a probationary license per County Board Resolution February 17th, 2010. So that's February 17th of this year. That's when it was granted. You flip to your next page and you can see the lists of concerns that have happened since the 17th of February. And I don't believe any of them are good. I don't believe any of them are positive. The majority of these, we can go through them here in a moment, occurred in the parking lot. Now, if I'm not mistaken, if it's on the property of the tavern, of the place of business, they're responsible for that area as much as they would be if it was inside the four walls of that tavern. That's my understanding. At least one other time, we'd been led to believe here in this county board floor that they were going to have increased security in the parking lot. There was talk of having cameras in the parking lot. Whether that came to pass or not, I do not know. But as I look forward here, I can see anonymous call of a large fight going on arrival. Liquor license was not properly posted but was valid. Owner warned. Skip down a page, skip down an entry. Anonymous call of a large fight in the lot. Huge crowd was leaving but no fight was located. So you can see the pattern here. There's disturbances. The authorities are called, whether it's city or county, and because they know the cops are coming, they take off. But the pattern repeats itself. Disturbance occurred in the park across the street, but I don't know if that's uninvolved patrons from the tavern came across. A large crowd was exiting at the time, no arrests or citations. So you can see this repeats itself over and over again. And then here's the good part. Patron arrested for a warrant and possession of cocaine. Not only is he holding cocaine, he's been convicted and he's out on a warrant. What type of place does this attract for clientele? Go down to your next entry. Deputy observed altercation in the parking lot, one arrested for probation violation. This is now July 8th. Their probationary license occurred in February, and this is the type of record we have. So you have to understand that when the county sheriff's department makes a recommendation, they're following the letter of the law. They're saying that under certain conditions, even though these happened, it's perhaps not serious enough because it didn't cross a certain threshold. But if you can read between the lines here, if you can take a little bit of inductive reasoning, this is not the type of place you'd like to foster more people, more drinking, more partying, more stage shows. They prove that they cannot handle it. So I don't really see where there's any gray area here. I would certainly not in any manner be advised to support a cabaret license for this place. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other supervisor comments? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? No. Motion carries. Clerk.
Resolution 50 from Judiciary and Law Committee, a resolution for a regular cabaret license for TNL Pub. Michael, yes. Haas, yes. Johnson, yes. Singer, yes. Ron Frederick, yes.
Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move resolution number 50.
Resolution 50 moved by Supervisor Michael, seconded by Supervisor Ron Johnson. Supervisor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution for, it is called T&L Pub, which is located at 2202 60th Street in the town of Salem. As stated in the resolution, they were granted a probationary cabaret license back in February 17th of 2010, and as stated in the back, there hasn't been any problems. You have the 2 times law enforcement has been there, and basically once and they're both relating to the application process. So it did pass unanimously. I urge your support for this establishment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 51 from Land Use Committee, approving amendment to the multi-jurisdictional comprehensive plan for Kenosha County 2035 for J&L Drizzle LLC for a change from farmland protection district to suburban density residential district in the town of Paris. Submitted by Land Use Committee. Brunick, yes. Esposito excused. Kohlmeyer, yes. Underhill, yes. Decker, yes.
Supervisor Brunick.
Move resolution 51.
Resolution 51 moved by Supervisor Brunick, seconded by Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Brunick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The state statutes require a resolution from the Land Use Committee and an ordinance from the full county board to amend the comprehensive plan. The resolution would allow an amendment to the Kenosha County Comprehensive Plan for a change from farmland protection district to suburban density residential district in the town of Paris. The town of Paris recommended approval of this request.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 52 from Land Use Committee, a resolution to approve the appointments to the Kenosha County Land Information Council. Brunig, yes. Esposito, yes. Kohlmeyer excused. Underhill, yes. Decker, yes.
Supervisor Brunig.
Move resolution 52.
Resolution 52 moved by Supervisor Brunig, seconded by Supervisor Kohlmeyer. Supervisor Brunig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution would approve 6 appointments to the newly created Land Information Council as required by Wisconsin 2009 Act 314. The county executive has submitted the appointments to the county board, and the Land Use Committee has reviewed the applications and interviewed the applicants. The Land Use Committee recommends approval of the following appointments: Martin Laycock, other public designate information technologies representative; John O'Day, county board supervisor; Kurt W. Bauer, Kenosha County surveyor; Joe Huck, local realtor; George E. Melcher, Land Information Officer, and Edward Van Tyne, the Public Safety Emergency Communications Representative.
Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Resolution 53 from Land Use Committee regarding request to approve the appointment of Supervisor Kimberly Brunig to the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Brunig abstain. Esposito, yes. Colmeyer excused. Underhill, yes. Decker, yes.
Supervisor Esposito.
Move Resolution 53.
Resolution 53 approved by Supervisor Esposito, seconded by Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, Kim is currently the Land Use Committee Chair and is currently serving on the Town of Salem Planning and Zoning Committee. She is well-versed on the planning and development issues facing Kenosha County today, and consequently would be a tremendous asset to the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, representing Kenosha County. I respectfully ask you join me in supporting Kim in this prestigious appointment. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Brunig will be a wonderful addition to Sewer PAC, and I'm certain she'll provide the added momentum to complete the county transit plan. Thank you.
Any other comment? Seeing no lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Communications from Michael K. Higgins, City Clerk Treasurer, regarding temporary zoning district classification of land in the town of Summers.
For land use,
From George E. Melcher, Director of Planning and Development, regarding future rezonings.
refer to land use.
Claims, Thomas Vetrano denied the allowance of litigation while incarcerated.
Refer to Corporation Council.
Deborah Colick, broken windshield.
Also refer to Corp Council.
Approval of the August 3rd, 2010 by Supervisor Kubicki.
Supervisor Kubicki.
I move the approval of August 3rd, 2010 minutes.
Moved by
as
Supervisor
presented.
Kubicki, second by Supervisor Arrington. All those in favor? Those opposed, motion carries. Motion to adjourn. Supervisor Michael, seconded by Supervisor Gentz. All those in favor signify by saying aye. We are adjourned. Jeff Gentz.